Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm so glad that you've made the decision to join us today at Gathering Point Online. I want you to know that we don't take your decision to invest this time with us lightly, and we want to add value to your life, and we want to speak into that life, and we think you're going to be better for it. If you missed out on our night of worship last week, we want to just tell you now, and I'll be the first one to let you know, mark August 9th on your calendar. We're going to do it again, if weather permitting, outside right here in the Gathering Point property, and those details will be coming in about a week where you can sign up for your circle so that we can do all the precautions to do that event well. Today, we're going to continue in our series for Kankakee County, and we have a special interview with someone who has been doing a great job of being for our community through their local business during this pandemic, and you're not going to want to miss that interview here today. But first, I want you to join Matt and Emily as we begin to sing a song together. As we talk about being for and for our community, I only thought it appropriate to talk to somebody who has had a huge impact in being for our community. And I want to invite my friend Russ McDowell, friend of Gathering Point, a longtime attender and leader of the church. And I just wanted to have him talk through us and walk with us on the journey of what it's meant for him to be for Kankakee County and our community in the last few months. So Russ, I just want to welcome you here today and welcome you to this conversation. And I just want to hear, because you have got an unbelievable story of how God used you and how God's using you and all of that. And I want to just bring the people up today. The pandemic hit. You're the general manager of Baker Square. And how were you able to leverage that, and how were people using that to be for our community? Go ahead.
Right. So, kind of going back here to, early, middle April, I think it was, myself and the people that worked in the restaurant and the community, we were all kind of on the same timeline. There was a 2-week close down, and then I was under the impression that we possibly could open up in 2 weeks. But as things progressed with the pandemic, 2 weeks turned into 6 weeks, and as we all know, that turned into 10 weeks. But really, going into that 3rd week of the government shutdown is what I think it was called, and there was no longer any dining room service. It became very clear to me as an operator that we were going to have to change our business model.
Yeah, pivot.
Right. Yeah. How do you survive in this environment?
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
And so initially, we just shut down the dining room. We cut our staffing levels, and we let everyone know that we were open for carryout service.
Sure.
And just kind of that was all that we were going to do. Shortly after that, maybe a week into it, I received a phone call from a friend of ours from Gathering Point, and he wanted to support a local restaurant and also support the local fire department, and asked if he paid for meals for the fire department, if I would prepare them and deliver them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I thought, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of it in Baker Square. So went ahead and did that, and then of course the people that worked at Baker Square, they were excited just to be doing something.
Yeah.
Because carry out sales, that's not why people came to Baker Square.
Right.
They came to get a delicious pie, or they bring a group of friends in after church on Sunday. But literally, when it came to carry out, we weren't their first choice.
Well, and I think to stop there, I mean, you did an extraordinary job, and we're Operator of the Year of all Baker Square just a few years ago, because you created a culture at Baker Square of family, not only with the staff, but also the regular attenders that would call Baker Square their home, and you had this whole community, and then that's pandemic is rough, and so you get to do this. And so the first meal, somebody donates money and you feed, and then what happens from there?
Right. So initially, I to the person who donated or purchased the meals, I asked them if I could put something on social media. It was kind of an event, and certainly I was grateful and wanted to recognize him, and wanted to. Just drop a plug for Baker Square and the Bourbonnais Fire Department. And initially, he said, no, I'm not about drawing attention to myself. I just want to do the right thing. And so I certainly, I understood, and I was okay with it. And then oddly enough, about 2 hours later, he called me back and said, hey, Russ, I've been thinking about this, and I've decided that it's okay to put it on social media if you'd like, but under one condition, and that is that you would challenge others in our community to do the same.
Yeah, to be for the community.
Yeah, to be for community.
So then what happened? I love this.
So I thanked him, and I'd taken some pictures of the delivery of the food, and just the look on the firemen's faces. And I took my time writing a post on Facebook. It just wasn't a point, a click, and then an emoji. It was a couple paragraphs,
Sure,
and
sure.
it was a little story.
Substantive, yeah.
Yeah, and I just put it out there.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing happened. Within less than 30 minutes, I had a couple more requests for others that wanted to do the same. So
And these are like $1,000 orders.
yeah,
right?
yeah, it was no joke.
Yeah.
So it was no joke, and one of them was for to feed the homeless.
Wow.
And the condition on that one from this particular gal was that I personally deliver it. That she wanted to make sure that the homeless in Kankakee County knew that they were loved and that they were thought of. And I mean, this woman was meticulous, how she wanted it prepared, the temperature, the time. And I would certainly, I mean, right away, I understood, that this is a responsibility. So I did that. I asked her if I could post something on social media. She said absolutely she was okay with that. In fact, she asked me to send her pictures or tag her name on the post. And that's where this whole thing kind of starts to really, it had a little bit of traction, but at this point it was out of the mud and it was on asphalt, and it was it was out of control. So people in our community just started donating. Hey, I want to feed the homeless too. I'm going to send you $100. Hey, Russ, I want to be a part of this. Where do I send the money? Russ, I want to take care of a week's worth of meals, enough for 20 people a day. Can you take care of that? When it was all said and done, it was interesting. I'd be on my phone trying to thank someone for their donation, and my phone was vibrating. I couldn't keep up. I think in the end, we served over 1,000 meals, and and that was all paid for by our community.
In the process, you modeled, hey, we don't want to have a standard of living. We're giving a standard for living, and you were a channel and a conduit that really made a huge impact in our community. But corporate Baker Square isn't doing as well as local Baker Square. The pandemic moves on.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that I was very aware that Baker Square wasn't on sound financial footing before the pandemic. In fact, in January, we closed over 20 stores.
Right.
Filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, was reorganizing, and this wasn't looking good for the stores that remained.
Mm-hmm.
So, so while I noticed, we had tremendous entree counts throughout this period, I didn't know if it was enough.
Right.
And a couple things happened. Obviously I was so overwhelmed and excited by the generosity of our community, but something that happened to me personally was, I found myself in the middle of something bigger than me.
Okay.
And to me, that bigness was God's good purpose. And for me, that was life changing. I realized a long time ago that as a new Christian and just trying to figure things out, that if I'm probably the most important thing I can do is to be the hands and feet. And I had to keep reminding myself that during this time. Hey, Russ, I know this is last minute notice, but can you deliver? And I kept telling myself, of course I can. Hands and feet, hands and feet. And so as it played out, my story, and even the story of Baker Square, an aging restaurant. I was part of something that was bigger than me as it was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And
What's it like being an owner-operator that has been at the very top of all the Baker Squares, and now you're having to look at this family, community, the community not only of your customers, but also the employees, and you're having to navigate and walk through this with them and tell them, I mean, that's a tough conversation.
yeah, that was challenging. So, as I was putting on this very public face of,
Right.
look what we're doing in the community.
Right.
Hey, join us. This is important work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's his work,
Right.
not ours. And from the guests walking in the door, guests that had eaten in that building for 30 years.
Sure.
Sit at the same table for 30 years,
Right.
at the same time on the same day of the week.
Right.
They were appreciated by the staff and by the managers, we became part of their story, and they became part of ours. And they would look me right in the eye and they'd say, Russ, are we going to be able to eat here next week? And so I struggled with knowing that probably wasn't going to happen.
Right.
But also wanting to be understanding and empathetic
Sure.
to their feelings.
Right.
And the same thing from the team members that worked there. Team members that worked in that building for 27, 29, 30 years. The team members that agreed to work while others were choosing, I'll take some time off.
Right.
People that had a vested interest in Baker Square.
Yeah.
Said, I'll show up.
Yeah.
And asking me, hey, do you think they're going to open the dining room next week?
Yeah.
And me just looking them in the eye and saying, I don't know.
Right.
I hope that we do, but I don't know.
Baker Square closes.
Yep.
It's for sale. You have this staff family, and you're going, but God, hey, we were doing all this stuff for the community. You were using this as a conduit. How are you processing that? And what's God? Go back to what's God teaching you in the midst of that?
Yeah. So early on, as I began a relationship with God, it was about a little bit over 12 years ago that God took the urge for me to drink away, and I've kind of followed my prayer life, and initially I would pray to God and I'd say, God, give me strength, give me courage. I was asking for a lot. Just give this to me. And then, as things started to change and I started to get some years of sobriety under me, I would ask God in my prayer life to show me. Show me how to be a better husband. Show me how to be a better dad. Show me how to be a better leader. And he did those things, and he showed me.
Yeah.
And then, years after that, my prayer language changed. It changed to, God, just use me. Use me for your good purpose, not mine. And so for me, I guess to answer the question would be, I've always struggled with having low self-esteem or not fitting in, and honestly, not being good enough. And I'm very aware of, because of my choices, I've left a trail of wreckage behind me. And one thing that I've learned through this this whole pandemic, being for Kankakee and our community, being overwhelmed by the generosity of the people that live in Kankakee County, is that if God thinks enough of me, not only to give me grace and mercy,
Sure.
but to use me for his good purpose, is that I matter.
Yeah.
Like, I matter to God. You know, the guy that's made some really bad choices and left a trail of wreckage behind him, that I matter. And that's life-changing.
Russ, sometimes I think it's hard for me and probably others to hear, like, what do you mean you don't matter, Russ? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean self-esteem? You were at the top of your particular environment and game. You're known around here as a servant and someone who's for other people and trying to help them. And so I think there's going to be a liberating component to people who are watching today going, wait, Russ has struggled with being okay with Russ? Because what did you ultimately have to figure out then? And what's the turning point of that? And what are you now realizing about God and how God views Russ?
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure how I came to some of these conclusions.
Sure.
Things that happened to me when I was younger, experiences, maybe something someone said or the way someone looked at me. I'm not sure. But for me to, I've learned just to be honest. I'm not exactly sure why I have low self-esteem. Like I said, I'm always trying to fit in. I believe that for me, that I was always searching for the next thing. And ultimately I found out the only thing that can fill me up is God's love.
Yeah. Let's kind of pause there, and I want to go from you've been very committed to being for our community, very tangible. You've been a conduit for others to be able to be for our community. That business goes away right now, unemployed and looking for work and caring for those employees and all that. Pretty soon, and I think this will be the opportunity we can say, is we're going to be able to start opening up small gatherings, 50 or less. So this means, middle school is going to be into the building soon. And this also means that Celebrate Recovery, which is something that you're heavily involved in and a leader in, is going to open too. How does now your involvement in Celebrate Recovery, how does that shift the same focus and passion that you've had being for our community now in a pandemic? For someone who may be thinking about even joining Celebrate Recovery, or maybe somebody thinks, well, I just have a minor addiction. What would you, first, let's start with that. What would you tell to somebody if they said, I just have a minor addiction or a manageable addiction? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so, I remember when I said those same things.
Yeah.
That, I'll deal with this later. I'm just not ready, or, I'm okay. I'm good.
Right.
So
it's not a real thing.
That's right. So, you kind of have to look in the mirror, and usually you'll find that there's probably some denial going on there.
Right.
But I guess I would tell you, it took I drank most of my adult life. 20 years lost. And if there's one thing I've learned throughout, my story, is that later problems always become greater problems.
Okay.
So, if you're honest with yourself and you ask yourself that question, I think we both know the answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if someone is watching today and says, okay, I need to be with people, this pandemic has not brought out the best in me, for whatever their particular, thing they do to experience a dopamine hit of some sort, invite them to Celebrate Recovery when they walk in. How do they do that, and when will that happen?
Yeah, so I can help you with that. So, I can tell you initially that when you walk into the room, and we meet right here at GatheringPoint on Tuesday nights. Large group starts at 7 p.m. And if you need any more information on that, email Dane Matthews right here at GatheringPoint. But when you walk into the room, you look around, and you're going to, and I've seen this play out over and over when newcomers walk in. They look around the room, they kind of scan the room and looking for their people, people that look like them, people that dress like them, and sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. But what does happen is immediately you find yourself in the middle of a room. Sometimes there's 20 people, sometimes there's 40, sometimes in between. And after about 15 minutes, the first timers always tell me, I can't believe this. I feel like I've known these people my whole life. They're just like me.
So you got to give it 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
All right.
If it's not working for you, just get up and go.
So that's your thing. If you don't get your food in 15 minutes, now it's if you could just give me 15 minutes.
Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah. So Celebrate Recovery. It's a Christ-centered 12-step program.
Right.
And it works.
And it's going to be here in person, real people, obviously social distance, and if those pieces will be spelled out, and you'll be able to click below in the email to sign up for that. But Russ, I want to say just thanks, and I know you're going to have issues with that. I get that. I understand that, and I appreciate that. But you're modeling something which is bigger than the things that you're saying, and you've found ways to be for your neighbor, to love your neighbor. And when you had the avenue for food and restaurant, you've done that, and you've modeled that well. You've been a conduit for other people to make an impact in the community. And even though your business has been shut down and that is no more, you're still investing in lives and finding ways while you're figuring out what the next step and the next click is forward. And I just want to thank you for being honest and vulnerable with us today, because hope seems to be on short supply these days, and nobody has to go it alone. And I want to thank you for your time and meeting with us here today. So as we close here today, below, I want you to look at the email, and Celebrate Recovery is one of those things. But I also want you to figure out ways that you can figure out, how can I be for? What's one small step this week that I can be for a neighbor, for a coworker, just encourage someone some way this week as we continue to make it through this together. So can I pray with you as we close here today? Let's pray. God, today I'm so grateful for the creativity that the Holy Spirit puts in us, where even in the midst of pandemic, even in the midst of job loss, even in the midst of uncertainty, you have a way of moving and interacting, if we'll pay attention, to call us to be something bigger than ourselves, more than ourselves. And there's things that you want to grow us into being more and more like you. I'm grateful for Russ today and his story. Even though his story's had ups and downs and twists and turns, it's your story. And thank you for helping him to surrender his story. And would you encourage each one of us here today to surrender our story to your story? And for that, we'll give you thanks and praise. We love you. Amen. Thanks for joining us today.